Okay, welcome.
Thank
So we're here with John and of course Bill Eater, and there may be some other people coming around. I'm not really sure, but we're just kind of shooting the shit, talking about current topics and seeing if anybody's interested. But John, if you don't mind, kind of just telling a little bit about what you're into and stuff like that, because we found each other on different platform, and we don't even have to get into all that because this is a totally different audience. But I'd be curious to know like kind of what motivates you.
Yeah, well, I guess the main things about me was I've been raised in I suppose you would call
His
it the
volume is
occult.
off.
My parents met as
Can't hear that.
Rosicrucians.
Jack, the volume's off.
No,
And my volume's off?
no. He can't hear us. Hold on. Let me text him. Just keep going. Just keep going. I'll
Okay,
kick
yeah.
him out. I'll kick him out of the studio, and then he'll come back in.
Okay. So yeah, I had a very odd upbringing. I was raised by two very young Rosicrucian parents. Neither one of them knew anything about Rosicrucianism, the occult, anything like that. My mother's background was Irish Catholic from the Bronx, and my father was raised in an orphanage. His father had been murdered when he was 2 years old, and he was an army guy. And he, as a dating strategy, joined the Rosicrucians. And within a couple of weeks, he met my mother there, and I was the product of that union. So that's how I was born. So they were both in their early 20s, and I was raised as a member of this Rosicrucian group. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a cult. My last meetings in that group were around age 7, and I don't remember a lot of the things that happened from age 3 and 4 being part of that group. But my mother, she was just blossoming. She's nuts. She still is crazy. She probably has about the developmental age of a 12-year-old emotionally. Intellectually, she's pretty advanced, but she basically brought me into all this stuff that she was into. So she meditated with me when I was a young kid, probably from around age 2 years old. And so by 3 and 4, that was probably the most intense period of time where I was having like LSD type experiences, doing meditations with her. And then past 3 and 4, things dropped off very sharply. It was then that she discovered Steiner and sent me to a Waldorf school, at which point she learned that it was absolutely not acceptable to do these kinds of things with a kid, that it was, absolute violation of freedom, a form of abuse. And so she stopped. And it was interesting for me because I had this very intense, experiences. They produced nightmares, horrible nightmares, but during experiences of meditation and whatnot, absolute bliss. Like for me, the spirit was quite real. I was into all of it. I was, for me, it was Saint Francis, it was Krishna, Buddha, Christ. Those were the key figures for me. And then in Waldorf school, it was, it was really there in the background. But Steiner, in his educational philosophy, says invite the child into the physical world. Do not keep the spiritual link awake. Keep a sense of groundedness, a sense of nurturing, a sense of foundation, but keep the invitation on the earthly side. So, absolutely don't talk to the children about esoteric subjects. Don't meditate with them, all of that kind of stuff. So things changed very sharply. And that continued on. The spiritual light dimmed for me, especially through reading, learning how to read, and developing the intellectual life. And it was gone by the time that I was about 9 years old. There's no more of those experiences, and they have not returned. I have not had any kind of enlightened experience. The experiences of even bliss, supreme peace, those kinds of things since that time. But I certainly remember it's made a huge impression on me, and this caused a period of apostasy for me, that I really went through a period of intense rebellion against what I considered to be that active, conscious, very real spiritual world. And because that world would not do me any favors, the world would not break through and do me a solid. I would literally, from about age maybe 10 on, I would, put a penny down or a Dungeons and Dragons die and, challenge the spiritual world, my guardian angel, Christ himself, whoever was on the other side, to say, I know you're there. I want to lead the good life. I want to lead, a life that is worthy, that is, connected to spirit, all the stuff that I, had as values when I was very young. But I'm not going to do it unless you do me this favor, flip the coin and those kinds of things, or else I'm going to rebel. I'm going to go absolutely apeshit and ruin everything. And they never flipped the coin or rolled the dice for me. So I rebelled hardcore. And by the time that I was 14, I was getting into all kinds of crazy fights. I expected that I was going to die violently. And I was institutionalized for a while. And you had a real heck of a time of it. I mean, I was as rebellious as could possibly be. I wasn't into drugs. I wasn't self-destructive. And I also was not a bona fide Satan worshiper. That was an interesting part of my experience, that I had the sense that the best way to rebel against the spiritual world would be to embrace Ahriman. But I also was aware of the conundrum that in order to really serve Ahriman, it means being a materialist, not believing in the spiritual world and all of that. And for me, that was somewhat unacceptable. I did not want to convince myself not to believe in the spiritual world. But what I wanted to do was basically you hold my deeds hostage, to say, I am on this guy's side to hurt you. That was my main goal, was to stab the guardian angel in the heart, those kinds of things, but always holding it open. If this world represented itself, fine, then I would become, an enemy of Ahriman and live the good life. So I was not willing to destroy myself in drugs. I was not willing to become an actual atheist materialist. But I was, in the words of one of my teachers, a very kind, wonderful Steiner guy, he always referred to me as a servant of Satan through these teenage years. So as life unfolded, I wanted to be independent. That was my greatest desire, was just to, hurl as fast as I could into adulthood. And so by the time that I was 16 years old, I dropped out of school with my driver's license. I started an apprentice carpentership. I joined a great band. I became a non-racist, but skinhead, third generation skinhead. I started a band, an Oi band in North Carolina. I believe they're still together to this day. They're called Patriot. I named the band, and without me, it would not have started. And I became happy. The girlfriend aspect of it really was important too, that I ended up marrying the first girl that I kissed. We were together from the time that I was 15 years old to 38. So girlfriend, band, and having a livelihood that I felt engaged with and gave me some sense of responsibility and purpose. All those things got my mind right. And so I changed focus. I no longer expected to die fighting or rebellion. And I wanted to turn my life around, to really live the positive life. I didn't have it at first. Took a while. I didn't have it specifically connected to the spiritual life, but I basically felt positive. And to start over, I moved with my girlfriend from North Carolina to the Bronx of New York. My grandmother was there. She had an apartment that was a 2-family apartment. She said, you guys can have the other side. You earn some money, put you on your feet. I'll help you out. And that's what we did. And by the time that I was 18, I went from carpentry, I could not do that kind of work in New York. Like they were just not, they wouldn't accept me for my age. I was pretty skilled. I was a good builder. After 2 years of working 40 hours a week, I had skills, but I could not deal with the environment of the unions, steel studs of the urban construction and things like that. And so I talked my way into an IT job, and that had its whole other trajectory. But it was at this time too where I said, okay, I'm going to play ball. I'm going to reconnect with the spiritual world. I'm happy, and that's when I started studying Rudolf Steiner at 18 years old, which proved to be not anything that I expected. I was expecting a continuation of Waldorf school, of a continuation of somehow the experiences that I had as a 3-year-old, but it never happened. I found Rudolf Steiner to be incredibly heady. He comes from the tradition of German philosophy. He's a respected philosopher in his time, and he's all about the steps. He's quite Aristotelian.
What's the name? What's the name of this person?
Rudolf Steiner.
Okay. I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but let's just say I'm probably a little bit all over the place. Like because I have listened to some of the story, but I wanted to get good context, and so I'll if you don't mind, I'll interject because
Sure, yeah.
my mind's already all over the place. I want to ask you a couple of questions because
Yeah.
I looked into Steiner a little bit just because I was looking at Waldorf for my son,
Right.
and I'm still considering it just because I don't like I'm a Christian, but I'm I don't know what let's just say I'm very skeptical of all institutions at the moment.
Yeah.
Not I don't mind a hierarchy, but I don't trust the hierarchy that we have that
Mhm.
I'm aware of at least, right?
Yeah.
And I have a friend right now who may be watching who's going to be very upset I said that, but hopefully they understand where I'm coming from. But
Yeah.
so I just say all that to say my biases. I know Pill Eater didn't really grow up that religious either, and I hope
Mhm.
he'll interject here in a second too.
Mhm.
The two questions I want to ask you, because the stuff you said about Steiner makes a lot of sense to me, and so and I don't mind going into it deeper, but I
Mhm.
want to do a overview, just because I have a lot of questions,
Mhm.
and I know Pill Eater wants to jump in because I really want to go back to white nationalism
Mhm.
because I think it's very connected to everything that we know is going on at a deeper level. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If that makes any
Yes,
sense.
definitely.
But because I was a white nationalist, I still consider myself a quote unquote white nationalist, but also I'm a big believer in mixed couples and stuff like this. Not that sounds contradictory, but I think that obviously whatever we're trying to grasp of the last 1,000 years of Western history, I don't live in a shire in Scotland anymore, right? So I can't pretend that I do. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So I don't know. So I don't know what that looks like, right? I'm not going to be out there fighting like Macbeth or William Wallace anytime soon, right?
Mhm.
So I just can't pretend that that's a reality for me because it's not. So what's your so the first question I have is
Mhm.
not on Steiner, but actually Rosicrucianism.
Yeah.
How legit do you feel Rosicrucianism is, uh, first of all, and second of all, do you what problems do you see with it? And you could just give me a vague answer. I
Yeah,
don't need
yeah.
super detail, but just a vague answer. Yeah.
So I don't know anyone who calls themselves a Rosicrucian um, personally. I know online on Substack there's a woman, Hazel Archer Ginsburg, who calls herself a Rosicrucian. But besides her, in my adult life, I've not spoken to one. In my opinion, there's basically no such thing as an organization that would call themselves Rosicrucians that you could join, that you could then call yourself a Rosicrucian. That time, I believe, is over. I believe in the evolution of human consciousness, and I believe that our times are completely different than the period of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, who gave birth to a lot of these institutions, these brotherhoods, secret societies, fraternities, what have you, mystery schools. It's one of the things that Steiner described over and over again, that is the need for renewal out of the new human conditions of consciousness, which the primary characteristics are freedom and the individuation of the individual. That's what, why he says that you can't find the spirit through institutions anymore. And so the Rosicrucians were, I believe, the last step from the order of warriors, builders, and artists. The Templars, I believe, created the Freemasons, and the Freemasons, they were obviously the builder stage. Templars were the warrior stage, and then the Rosicrucians was the third step in that process. They were the artists or the healers. They were doctors. They formed, according to Steiner, in the 1400s, and outwardly history places them as beginning in the early 1600s when the manifestos came out. So that has run its course, according to Steiner, that they've done their work, and beginning in the late 1800s, we need an absolute renewal. But it was in that time, in the late 1800s, where there was an outer renewal of the old forms. According to Steiner, the Masons went bad in the French Revolution, that they became basically worshippers of Ahriman, as Steiner calls it, which is the embodiment of materialism. And I believe that the modern day Rosicrucians, they seem like, to me, Freemasonry light, that they're like, the Diet Coke of Freemasonry, that as far as I know, they have not been involved in the same kind of scandals as Freemasonry. They're not involved in power as much as Freemasonry. It seems to be like a gentle fraternal order.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So, because like I have somewhere I'm going with this, and so you see it as a not very serious in the realm of power, but it is very powerful as far as like okay, because I don't know much about Rosicrucian in and of itself, but I do know a little bit about Masonry and a little bit about Templars.
Okay.
And like I'm very skeptical of all that stuff for one reason. I'll be on, like, I'll just say it up front, like, because like I truly don't hate Jews, so I don't want people to get this impression like, oh, I'm just like this hater of Jews. But I do think that the Jews have a very hardcore understanding relative to us whiteys as far as the Kabbalah and the Zohar and language manipulation. Like personally, like I people will say I'm a schizophrenic. I truly believe the English language is basically a weapon that was created to, build incantations that people will use without understanding what it means, right? Like, if that makes any sense, right? Like, now again, I'm not saying like it's just like all just a bunch of witches that did this. I'm saying most people involved obviously don't know that, right? I'm just saying, like, if you look at it in its totality from the beginning of the English language till now, I don't think the English language has served whitey the way that we're told that it does, right? Like it's kind of seemed to turn us into a golem, is what I would say personally, right? I would say that we're basically, and now again, I'm not saying that the Jews are like consciously like looking at us like we're a golem. I think some of them do, but I think it's just more of like we are kind of like this like race of people that have amnesia. That's how I would describe it, right? And I'm just talking off the top of my head. I haven't really thought about this, like how to describe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But but how do you feel about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So really good points, and these are the essential things that Steiner speaks about, and he gave all kinds of predictions for the future. He all of his work was dedicated to our times, and he died in 1925, and so. I grew up reading about this stuff. I'm 52, and I've been reading about this since I was 18. There definitely is, I believe, within humanity, there's the two basic spiritual streams. I relate them to Cain and Abel. I see almost everything in a framework of Cain and Abel. Basically, the culture of the Jewish people takes after Abel.
I think the audio is off. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
We can hear you, but I don't know if you can hear us. Can you hear us?
I think there's a glitch. I can't hear.
Oh no.
Yeah,
I can
it's
hear
okay.
you.
It's not. I just got to reset him. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll come back. It's just it's not anybody's fault. It's just a StreamYard. Unfortunately, is like that.
So I
So
believe.
if we go in and out, just keep talking because we have to go in and out to
Okay.
get back in
Gotcha.
to get audio back.
So according to Steiner, it is the Cain people. So basically, the non-Jews, the people who are opposite of the Jews, who are meant to lead our epoch. Steiner calls this the European epoch, and according to him, that the European epoch coincides with the age of Pisces. According to Steiner, the age of Pisces takes place from roughly 1400 AD till 3500 AD, at which time that the people of Abel will they will take over the basic gesture for leading humanity forward. The people of Abel, they are the priests, the shepherds, and the teachers, as opposed to the warriors, the builders, and the artists. Their human mission is to develop cosmic love. The mission that we're supposed to work on now, carried by the Cain types, is to develop freedom. That's the main pillar. So all of this is symbolized in various places going back, prior to Egypt. That this, according to Steiner and people who were into hardcore masonry and whatnot, they say it was established in Atlantis, and that you can look at these two cultures and their trajectories throughout history. According to Steiner and other esotericists, it was the primary mission of the Jews, the people of Abel, to prepare the body of Christ and to follow the law. According to Steiner, they were the most spiritually separate people that the world had ever produced, that they were materialists, and that they had a role, however, the lowest of all the roles, but it was an important one, to develop the physical body of Christ. So that's why they were given the law. That's why they had to have religion, because they had no direct experience of spirit. Religion is basically a means to connect to spirit when one is disconnected. So their mission ended, according to Steiner, with Christ, that they truly were meant to become then Christians. They were meant to follow the path of Cain, and that many of the problems that we have these days is that this culture is pursued, but it does not have a mandate. It does not have a mission. It's not positively behind human evolution. So we have the blue path, the Abel path, and they have some gifts for the world, but it's greatly diminished compared to the Cain types now, who are supposed to be working out of Europe. But both brothers, and this is something that I always try to emphasize, that the red path, emphasized in the Templars, the Masons, and the Rosicrucians, they also have their evil side. I will not argue, when somebody says, hey, did you know that it says this in the Kabbalah? Did you know that the Talmud says this? This is in the Torah, all that. Yeah, of course, that this is, I think it's not, not a lot of that is worth debating. But what I do believe as well is that that there are masters above this culture. There are masters above the institutions of Abel. Those are the Freemasons. They are also not working for humankind, and they typically layer the elite, where the warriors, builders, and artists will be the boss in this area. Then the priests, shepherds, and teachers will be given a mandate in this area, and they have it nicely arranged. And for instance, banking, that I think one of the greatest evils and the worst powers that we have in the world right now is because the children of Abel, the culture of Abel, is the province of the people of Abel. It's meant to be the children of Cain, who are to decide how economies run. So, but who has that power? It's not the people of Abel who ultimately decide if the Federal Reserve is created, if the International Bank of Settlements is operating, if the euro is going. That is all, in my mind, from what I learned, of the children of Cain, Freemasonry. But they are the ones who realize like that their kin are they're a bunch of anarchists, they're a bunch of individualists that given
Right.
their own power, they would form what Steiner says is the future. The healthy future is small economies, people using their own localized currencies and not connected to the big picture. So the Freemasons know, yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. What were you gonna say about Freemasons?
So the Freemasons know that's the case. If they give this power to the Cain people, they're going to screw everything up, and the power will be compromised. So they give it to the Jews. They're the ones who are.
So what would be screwed up exactly? Like, because I understand what you're saying, but what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah,
by that?
the power situation that if overnight everybody said we're no longer going to buy with American dollars, we're going to completely boycott all internationally recognized currencies. There's going to be no, nothing's going to happen there. I'm not going to pay anybody to unclog my toilet with a US dollar, a euro, or anything like that. The system would collapse overnight. All of their power depends on using the currencies.
So it's basically out of self-interest, essentially, right? Like I like the analogy of like driving down the road. Like the reason why the road works is because everybody's self-interested and stays in their lane, but also at the same time, this is why people have road rage and all this stuff too, right? Is it kind of like that, or?
The idea of self-interest comes from Adam Smith. There's a famous line from the book where he said, "It's not from the benevolence of the baker for which we depend our bread, but it is his self-interest. It's because he wants to acquire more that he bakes the bread." That's where that idea comes from. But I've read Adam Smith from cover to cover. I love Adam Smith. Like I expected I was going to find, a grand conspiracy there, that the guy was going to be a scumbag. I love him. I think he's a great individual and brilliant. But I do not think that Wealth of Nations and Adam Smith's work has been faithfully interpreted at all. I think it's been absolutely turned on its head. And the business about self-interest and people working as individuals, I think, is absolute bullshit. And it's used as an excuse to take the best attributes of the people of Cain and turn it on its head.
And when you say people of Cain, you mean white people, right?
Yeah,
basically,
more
or less,
white,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like I don't know if you're into Danzig, but Danzig has a song that I love because I had to ask my friend to explain it to me. But it's like Twist of Cain, and it's about
I love that. Was my favorite song as a teenager. For a couple of years. Yeah, I love that.
Because I had no idea what it meant until like a year ago or something. I had to ask my Muslim friend who understands this kind of stuff. I was like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, "Explained it to me." So.
It's. I mean, hopefully we'll get into it later. But it's like, but Steiner's point of view, it's extremely complicated about ethnicity, race, coloration, all those kinds of things. For me, we'll later get into it. But yeah, so it is, in simple terms, it is the white Europeans of the Cain stream who are meant to lead humanity.
Right. Yeah, and I see it more as like we're a certain guild of people. I don't even see it as like a class or a caste or anything like that. It's like we have a certain thing about us.
I would call it a spiritual culture. It's a like one recognizes it within themselves once they're exposed to it. It's a spiritual kinship. I heard a great story about a guy who thought he was Scottish. He had a Scottish last name and found all about his clan, and his whole family was raised in the Scottish tradition. And then he found later that he was German, but his German family just had an extremely complicated, embarrassing name. So they just changed it to a name that sounded really American. And he was devastated for a little while, like feeling like he had to give this up. And then he said, "You know what? I'm Scottish. I've become part of this clan, and
Well,
and it
well,
was
well,
yeah.
well. That's what's interesting is like I have family. Like I'm pretty sure I'm German, Dutch, some sort of some sort of like Nordic. I'm sure, but uh, but 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 I can trace it back to like Wales and Scotland and
Mhm.
England. Like I can for sure do that. But that whole area basically was Germanic. That's what's weird about it, is like the Germans were in and out of that area. And I have a whole conspiracy theory that the Jews basically funded all that. And I think you could go back pretty far back, like 900 probably, and argue that the Jews kind of orchestrated like the Norman conquest against the Franks, and the Franks
I've
were
heard
against the
that. Yeah.
Normans. And again,
It's,
I'm just like, this is just my conspiracy theory. I'm not like a real
yeah.
hardcore historian, but like you can kind of see like between the Dutch and the Netherlands and German stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I think it's very complex. In Steiner's cosmology, there's reincarnation, and he said that many people in our days, he said, for the people born from 1966 to 1999, this will be a high concentration of warriors, builders, and artists will be there. He said they will be the people who will change the world. He said we're going to be plunged into a dark age. He predicted World War II. He predicted the World War III that's going on, and he's like it's going to come very close. He said, but don't worry. He said that that things will change. That people will be born out of the spirit. They'll be born with what means to remember. And according to Steiner, reincarnation is real, and that many people who are on the earth today remember in one form or another these previous lives. And they're carrying forward a mission that is thousands of years old and will unfold over thousands of years. And basically, the mission is to win individual freedom for the sake of cosmic freedom. And that's done despite the designs of Ahriman. Ahriman in Steiner's cosmology is the two-horned beast from the Apocalypse, from the Bible, who is this. He's basically Sauron or Saruman, Ahriman, Saruman. Tolkien was friends with Barfield, the third member of the Inklings, along with C.S. Lewis. He was a student of Steiner, Barfield was, and many of the symbols, stories, and feelings of both Lord of the Rings and the Narnia series comes from Steiner ideas. So we have Saruman after Ahriman, and Sauron really after Sorath, who is an even worse demon than Ahriman. But Ahriman is the demon of materialism, and according to Steiner, Ahriman wishes to incarnate into humanity as a whole. So he wants to have them homogenized. He wants to have them, one thought. You were mentioning the English language. That's something Steiner talked about a lot. Was that Ahriman was going to use the English language to basically spread lies. He said it would become the language of lies and manipulation, and that a great deal of work would have to be done to fight against that. But Ahriman needs everybody thinking one way. Just a couple of political parties. Basically no more than two choices. And that is, counter to everything about remembering, about reincarnation, about these interests that people have, and so on and so forth. But it's exciting for me. I've been studying this stuff, and I felt like I was pretty awake by about 1998. And for me, it's nothing but absolutely exciting to talk to people like you, and many others who it's just people are waking up. That people are realizing that this is an absolute sham, and they're figuring out different ways to connect with their destiny and realize their connection to this grand spiritual mission. I don't know what direction you'd like me to go in there from there.
Yeah, I have more, but I want to see if Pilliter wants to jump in, because
Okay.
I don't know. I know he's a little bit under the weather too, so I'll give him a chance to jump in.
Yeah, I was listening. I was just going over some of the stuff and hearing about John's life. Just going on back, I would say I bit the skinhead bug when I was a teenager too. I was into things like Mice Trap Distribution out of New Jersey and things like that. But yeah, at the same time, Skinhead wasn't exactly white nationalist. There's variety school of it, but the point in being is that I honestly believe that Gen X had definitely more freedoms than millennials, as millennials seemingly became literally by definition safe sleazy, where instead of maximizing some of the freedoms that Gen X argued, the millennials instead did something worse and instead started to patrol people and basically became more liberalized. And I think this is a problem we're seeing right now in this weird, strange managerialism where the end of American liberalism has became something more of people realizing that there's self-contradictory or paradoxical kind of glitches. How can you really be, fully expressive when we're, politically correct and judged what we say, and people now can be canceled at whim? I'm very doubtful whether, punk is actually a thing or expression or a way to destroy people from within rather than giving hope and expression to the artist. But just like how you went on to Steiner, reminds me of my own reading and writing, and how things being in Pennsylvania, especially in the United States on the East Coast, things really haven't changed that much in 25 years, let alone you have to argue whether we're in like a reactionary Golden Dome sphere of sorts, in that perhaps you could say that things are not in America growing at the level that China is, but instead everything's being delayed in like this kind of Amish people with smartphones and kind of this new type of feudalism where nobody really has a job and America just halt production, and what's really going on is the people who did make their money can have the privileges of communism, but everybody else has to be in debt by a few credit card companies in Wilmington. But I find that really interesting how you're comparing the work of Steiner to some of the commentary that's happening right now. And it does make me think, even though we have platforms like X or Substack, it seems to be the same cabal of people who are allowed to be platformed. And when new voices come in, you better be lucky if you ever do get 1,000 followers on Substack. Yeah. And supposedly people who are megaphoned and are popular all of a sudden have 10,000 followers. It's hard to imagine that. It's seeming like the only people on Substack are Slavoj Žižek and Chuck Palahniuk with 10 plus subscribers, and yet you'll have a guy who used to run Arctos Books named Konstantin von Hofmeister who has almost the same amount. And then you start to question whether followers are real or not, or just hype made up by algorithms of sorts.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's perhaps somewhat demoralizing to talk about Steiner's predictions for the future, especially because when we look at what we're up against about the organization, about the Borg type mentality that resistance is futile, and you see the awesome power of that mindset that so easily connects, that hive mind, as people have described it, I think is a great description of it. And to realize that the counter to that, according to Steiner, that it's not the mission, nor is it the capability of the King people to organize on that massive scale. So what we imagine as classic resistance, raising the army, all those kinds of things, is those are old forms. Those come from the glorious memories of the past, but that the future, because it's based on freedom, because it's based on the path of the human being, that the resistance is meant to be in small groups, small cultures, and it's one of the reasons why I don't I don't imagine or try to call in, or it's not my ambition to recreate skinhead culture, to say let's do the fourth wave, let's figure out how to get the things together and push out the brand and have a movement that we can be satisfied to say, yes, we've achieved something. There's thousands of people here and there that are doing this. that that's not the future according to Steiner. According to Steiner, it's it's a handful of individuals at a time that in an individual life, when one wakes up and starts to have memories, starts to have a feeling for destiny and so on and so forth, that one should really only look to a handful of individuals to work with, to form their community and whatnot. But enough, hopefully enough to form, some kind of real economic entity, that's where the real change is, where, the brotherhood that needs to stand behind economy, the tight-knit groups that can be autonomous enough to use their own currencies, those kinds of things are the hallmarks of the future, not the mass movement, a new political party, a new promise of moving over to Bitcoin, or whatever it is
it's funny you said that, because I fell hard into the anarcho-capitalist stuff early on, and I never did crypto or Bitcoin, but because I was always suspicious, and thank God, because I mean, even if I made it, let's say I made $1 million or something doing it, like, it's so evil in the premise of like how they're doing Bitcoin, because it is this like selling you this idea of, like you said, like this way to get outside of the system and all this. Because I mean, I spent so much of my life, I had a similar thing to you. Like when I was young, I did like, I went to church, but it was like this very personal for me. Like, I don't even want to get into it, but very personal relationship with, Jesus and stuff like this. And then as I got older, I did like meditation and kung fu and this kind of Eastern stuff. Right. And I found that as complementary to Christianity. I didn't see it as an opposition to it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think they're oppositional. I don't believe that personally. It wasn't my experience, at least. Right. But then as I've gotten older, I truly cherish the spiritual stuff, but also like I see that things are very economic and material, and you don't want to worship it. And I think that's the trick of like what you said about the Jews. Like, I see them as someone who just, so much, they try to pretend that they're spiritual, and I'm sure some of them are, but a lot of what they're talking about is really material, right? And they're trying to like disguise it as if it's some mystical thing, but really it's about changing matter and minds and harnessing. And I think most of it's about harnessing real willpower, right? And I don't want to get into Crowley right now, but I have this kind of like conflicting view on Crowley, because I don't know much about him. I don't think he's good, but I think that there's a lot of truth that comes out of these dark figures like a Crowley, or like some of these other mystical things that seem very evil, but it's still telling you the truth, but the truth is not good in and of itself. I had this thing where I think like truth is a weapon, right? It can be used for good or bad. It's not, or a tool. It's a tool. I guess it's a tool. Like, there's ultimate truth that only God and Jesus have access to, right? And then we have access to lesser truths, but having access to that truth does not make it good. And I think this is where white people have fallen into this thing of like, well, the truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. Well, that's not really the case, though, right? Like, if you can know the truth all day long, and if you use it to like deceive people or whatever, like, that's not good, unless it's like out of self-defense or something. But sorry to go off on a tangent, but I just wanted to.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, my understanding of the Aleister Crowley path and the Black path is spirituality in the service of power, in the service of materialism. And that is exactly what the Ahrimanic beings promise. They basically say, if you let us step into your consciousness, we will provide you with material power. And the Luciferic angels, they promise pleasure, a removal from the earth through the superior ego, the beauty, sex, heroin, those kinds of things. It's pure spirit, but no connection to the earth, and that's the yin and the yang of the evil. But there's definitely, we live in a world that is practicing occultism. I mean, I think that it's pretty safe to say that all of the institutions of power are thoroughly immersed in black magic, in black occultism, and whether it's specifically Crowley or otherwise, it is that, and it is the spiritual perception, spiritual arrangements that deal with the devil, whatever it is.
And I just want to make it clear, like, me myself, I'm totally against black magic, but I
Yeah.
but I can recognize why people fall for it, and I can understand like the allure of it, because it's like you said, like we're looking at this insurmountable force that is mostly just people who believe they're pursuing their will, or whatever's best for the good, like the collective, like whatever's best for the most amount of people is good.
Right.
But I like Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if you ever listened to him, but he had a lot of good like basic arguments that kind of defeat that. Like, for example, like a lot of people want to have like this pathological altruism around like charity, right? But charity is one of these things where it's very difficult to administer, right? Like trying to help somebody is a holistic thing. If somebody has a problem and you really want to help them, you got to understand so much about that person.
Yeah.
And yourself and
Yeah.
everyone else involved in the situation and the material and the spiritual.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff involved in that, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is why it was always relegated to the church, and then now it's relegated to the government, and the government is obviously, like you said, kind of
Yeah, the
interested in
opposite.
power. It's not really
Yeah.
interested in a
Yeah.
holistic approach of the situation at hand, right? So
Yeah, I would say the opposite. Yeah, that they're really looking to harm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's difficult. When I started studying Steiner, I read it with my ex, and she was really young at the time, 17 years old. But I was never able to answer the question that she had, where she was raised as liberal and woke as you could possibly be. Her mother was a single mother teacher. They went to the UU Church, Unitarian Universalist Church, and the religion was woke. Back in the 90s, it was woke. And we were reading Steiner together, and Steiner said, but at some point, if you're after power, you will never acquire true spiritual experience. The only way you can acquire spiritual perception while being after power is pursuing the black path. So my ex, she said, well, why would somebody pursue spiritual development for any other reason but power? And it was a damn good question, especially from her upbringing, that there's really no answer, no earthly answer that you can have for that. Either it's the power to acquire pleasure and escape from the physical world through Lucifer, or it's the Ahrimanic pursuit. And
that's a really good way to put it, by the way. Yeah, that's a very
thanks. For me, I think I from that point to this point, the only thing I can point to is that the memories that I had when I was a kid. If I didn't have those memories, those experiences, there's nothing that I could do to connect to to spirit, to humanity, destiny, whatever. It would be power. It would have to be one of those powers. And so it's a real conundrum that humanity is in. And I think, without a doubt that any nation, any group of people that has a name or what have you, they are unfortunately, it's a power, and it makes it really difficult because the old religions are needed. Steiner often emphasized that many people are young souls that still need the old forms. They need the churches, they need the mass movements and whatnot. They need to be shepherded. But
well,
yeah.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, like the reason I am a Christian is like, I mean, I truly do believe, but again, what that means relative to like the Catholic Church, like, I don't know if they believe the way that they say they believe either. So, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be clear about that. Like, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
but I think that's the story of Jesus. He's basically saying, like, don't go down the black magic path because it's nothing but death and sin. There is nothing there. Leads you to emptiness essentially, and not the good kind, right? So
I mean, it's so complicated for me. Like I have met one person who was a Steiner follower who claimed clairvoyant experience. I believe he has clairvoyant experience. I believe that he's a good Steiner follower. He's the only one that I've met, and he did not find it through Steiner. He had an experience of spontaneous initiation, if you will, a huge spiritual crisis, and found Steiner's work in Christianity after that. anybody that I've met who's found their way into Steiner, they're a type. They're not spiritual people. And on the other hand, I've my family's Bronx Catholic, Irish Catholic, and many people who are Catholics are quite spiritual. They really do have a profound feeling for Christ. For the spirit, for humanity, and also with people who are pursuing Eastern paths and things like that. So yeah, I'm just speaking in general that that to say, abolish all the churches or organized religions or things like that, that's one of those categories of, that's potentially very harmful for humanity, that there are many people who that's their proper path. Their proper path is actually to be part of a congregation that doesn't have Christ, but still the spiritual being, the connection that they have is progressive for them.
Right.
So yeah, it's complicated. But
No,
I mean,
it's very hard for me to even try to put into words like what I'm trying to get across. But I know that you're pretty much on the same wavelength. I'll put it that way. Yeah, it's a pretty good way to put it.
Yeah, one thing that I think that we have, and it's evident from a lot of people that I speak to that are that they're powerful, awake, spiritual people, is experience counts. That you can wrestle with these questions. You can say, I was drawn to Kung Fu, and the Eastern path is a method, and to say that that's not a contradiction to Christianity, that's rooted in experience. And I think that is the really important characteristic of the Cain stream, is that the experience is there, that the Cain as the masculine values his work.
Right. And that's what's interesting about the Abel stream, I guess you'd say, which is the Jewish side or whatever else you want to call it. I also think, because I think that you have I think that there's this dialectic, and then there's it's kind of like it's like you have an east and west, but then you also have a north and south, and most people don't talk about the north and south, if that makes any sense, right? There's it's like a quadratic formula, but we're only really looking at it from like a Cain and Abel or a Jacob and Esau or Rome and Jerusalem. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I'm trying to really get at in my writing and my understanding the thing, because that's part of it, but also I believe that we'll find people from every tradition that align on some level as well, right? And so when I talk about Jews, I'm speaking in general, right? But I've met enough of them to know, generally speaking, they don't have, I don't know, I'm trying to go with what you're saying, because I truly do feel this way too, but it's when you talk to most Jews, they grew up they're so insulated in their own thing, right? They don't really empathize with others. And white people, my family on my dad's side, who I don't know very well, they've literally lived in every continent on the world, probably, right? They've been able to blend into old school Europe or Asia or Africa or wherever they've been, right? And and most people in the world are not capable of doing that. And the thing is, the Jews are these wandering people, but they have this very strong identity that they've held with them, right? White people are kind of different. We kind of go and amalgamate things. We're more of an amalgamation, I feel like, And I feel like the Jews are this people that don't really amalgamate, but they synthesize, if that makes sense, right? They like to synthesize things and then remix it and sell it back to you, but then ultimately they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. White people drink the Kool-Aid, if that makes any sense,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's my feeling about Israel and the culture of the Jews is that it's important to understand, to learn, to make the distinctions. But I believe that the polarization and to repeat the fratricide of Cain killing Abel, or what the Jews want to do is kill Abel now. They want revenge. Or that's a really strong cultural unifying force, is to destroy Cain, to get revenge. And and this is what people are experiencing and talking about. And I believe, ultimately, the strength of Abel in of itself, the good part of Abel, that's the part that will defeat the evil part. That when it comes to Cain and Abel coming together like this, that they're not meant to fight it out anymore. The Abel is not meant to gain revenge, and Cain certainly does not have it in his destiny to defeat them. And that's something that I think that there's too much work to do, and it's often a great distraction to think about.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree. And that brings us back to white nationalism ultimately, because this is the thing that I've had to realize is like, again, like I've never been this like, super hateful person. Like I just remember reading, and I was a history and English person, mostly in school. I mean, I was really good at math and stuff, but like my heart was in the history and English and literature. But like when I really look at the situation, and I hope Pilidor will jump in. I know he's a little sick, so no pressure on him. But
I'm listening.
it's like, yeah, jump in any time. But I'll say this really quick, like when I looked at Hitler, right? Because you were talking about Hitler, and we don't have to go deep down that road right now. I don't mind. I mean, I could talk about it forever, but I just want to give my perspective on it briefly. Like, you know, I was thinking like Hitler's kind of the good guy in the scenario, but there is no hero, if that makes any sense. Like he was kind of like, and he could have been an agent for all I know. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that like ultimately in the scheme of things he was good, but what I'm saying is like as an American growing up in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and whatever, right? Like just looking at it at face value, it's like why the hell were we over in Europe blowing up a bunch of Europeans for however many years we were doing it, because I think that war was probably starting much earlier than World War One, personally, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
and so whatever was going on with that, and obviously it has to do with religion and occultism and
Yeah.
all the caveats aside, right?
Yeah.
Just looking at it as an average American, it's like, would we be worse off speaking German right now? Would we be worse off had they won? And I just thought
Yeah.
that as an average guy, and people, and it was funny because like growing up I grew up in the South too. Nobody really had a problem with that, but they also didn't like to hear that because a lot of people were just very proud to be Southern, but at the same time they're very resentful that the South had lost. And I was very resentful. I was very resentful about it because it was just a principle. It's not like I wanted slavery or anything like that. It's just kind of like, what is all this technology and industrialization for? Like, is this like it's
Yeah.
harder for me to get a wife and kid? It's harder for me to find a good job. It's harder for me to own land and livestock. And like, what is it? What is this really provided for me or my people? Ultimately,
Yeah.
nothing of
Yeah.
value really, other than convenience, right? So I was just
Mhm.
looking at it from that perspective, and I think there's a lot of people that resonate with that. But this current version that I see now really rearing its ugly head for the last 10 years, I've personally witnessed it, but certainly now at this level, like, it's a lot worse, is
Yeah.
this kind of like very ignorant, I'm trying not to use bad words, but
Mhm.
I think they're trying to turn white people into the inwards of the world. Let's just
Oh
put it
yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
They want to make
Absolutely.
us
Absolutely.
these very ignorant,
Yeah.
retarded people that just have
Yeah.
this chip on our shoulder and are upset. And I
Yeah.
actually see black people coming out of that, and I'm very happy for them, right? But I see white people going directly head on into this very ignorant,
Yeah.
uh, base level, like hate everybody, including ourselves, but we're going to blame the Jews. And look, the Jews have plenty of blame to go towards them, but they take zero accountability, or responsibility,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's
yeah,
according to the humans that they want a world order that is either dominated by the extreme form of Cain, which is Hitler, or they want the world dominated by the extreme form of Abel, which is the Jews. And they won't have it any other way. It's either, for a long time, American foreign policy has been designed on the red and blue pillars of the liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, whatever you want to call them. But those are the colors of the pillars of Solomon's temple. The blue being the Jews and the red being the Cains. And America is ruled by foreign policy, and in foreign policy, the first rule is politics ends at the border. And their word for conservative means dominate the world through war, Cain, or dominate the world through technology and finance, Abel. And all of our politics is downstream from that. They do not care how things flip back and forth. And things have flipped back and forth incredibly in the political world and culturally, where the values change dramatically. But the one thing that stays consistent is that recipe where they design it like one great big battery, and it's sadomasochism. It's one direction or the other, and that's often what I say to to Jewish friends, colleagues, whatever. That I say, my one problem that I have with Jewish culture and with many Jews that I encounter is they will not allow the relationship to be anything but sadomasochistic. That they will accept if I say I hate you, I really want to keep you beneath me, here are my values, or they will be pleased if I run around and want to serve them. But they will not trust the relationship that is equal. And that
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
And I believe that comes from the brainwashing from the top, is that they really want to piss off the world and the West of Israel, the Muslims, as much as possible, to say, are you guys mad enough yet? Are you mad enough yet? Because if you push the button, if you all say, okay, bring on Hitler, we'll do it. But you've got to be serious, because they know that whether you're a jock. I mean, I've been a teacher. I've taught in homeschooling programs, whatnot. I've been around a lot of really quality individuals, strong lads and things like that. And I know that their hearts are good. A strong man, a knight, or whatever. You cannot get them to go around putting people up against walls and alleys and gunning them down. It's just not part of the stream of the warrior. The warrior's not like that. My father was he died lieutenant colonel in the Army. He did 2 tours in Iraq, in his later days, and I was telling him, my father, the Army is not the Cain stream anymore. He became, I never was interested in masonry when he became a Mason. He really believed in like the knightly stream and the pounding red heart of America was still there. I was like, that is not there anymore. I said, America has adopted the role of the cat, of Abel, and Abel fights like a cat, which like a torturer. And the Cain is the bull, they often call the Goyim the bull people. And the way bulls fight is not with passion. They knock down the enemy, whatnot, and then they're at peace. They eat their food, and and they don't indulge in the suffering of their enemy and those kinds of things. But that's the nature of the cat and Abel. And when he saw the torture in Abu Ghraib and whatnot, it destroyed him. When he finally saw that feminine aspect, and even females were involved in the torture, that destroyed his warrior.
Yeah, see, that's a good way to put it too, because I boil a lot of these dialectics down, and when you really boil it down, it is yin and yang. It is feminine and masculine.
Yeah.
And the trans thing, a lot of people are misinterpreting it. Like, I don't hate trans or anything. I don't trust them. I don't like them, because I think that ultimately, just like a lot of white people and just like a lot of other people, right? They're ultimately just, programmed, to do what they do, right? Yeah. But ultimately, this is like, it's very clear to me. And I say this as a guy who didn't really have a father around. Okay. This side is extreme, they've basically taken on this Shekinah, or whatever you want to call it, aspect to them. And, they're not, and I'm, we've all been married here on the stream. You can't negotiate with a woman. Okay. I mean, this doesn't work that, you know what I'm saying? And, and I think that this is deep within mythology. Like, I'm trying to write a syncretization right now of like Greek mythology with, Christianity and Judaism, because I think that they're basically the same story, just retold in different ways, about this like divine feminine. You have like the earth, and you have the sky daddy coming down and impregnating the earth and all this. Mm-hmm.
and it seems that these guys, like you said, they kind of like worship this divine goddess or whatever, but they say that they worship God, but I don't think they do. I think they hate God. I think they hate their father, and they just want to destroy masculinity in any form that it exists. And I think it's mostly subconscious. For whatever reason, like this, and it is kind of like a battery. It's like they're the negative, we're the positive, and they're trying to put us on a trajectory to just blow everything up. That's what I feel like. Like that's what they're kind of doing. And that's a very feminine thing. Like people don't understand. Women will just kill everything, right? People don't understand this.
I mean, hopefully they are understanding that now. But I mean, for me, I was the question of Nazi Germany is instructive to understand what cane culture looks like. But just like what happened in the Civil War, that mass organization of cane people is not right for cane people. It's not for a short period of time. For when the conflict happens, conscripts and all marching in lockstep, shutting down different arts, philosophies, and things like that. It's necessary for war. But to lose sight of it, to have it just be purely reactionary, is the difficulty that I have with the idea of Hitler, because it does. I never thought I would think it. For a time when I was a teenager, I was like, that was glorious. That was a glorious reaction to the real danger that the Able stream represented, that Ahriman represented. It was wonderful to see that coming together at that fantastic scale, because it was pure cane type. But what they did internally was quite destructive for their collectivism. That it did not allow the individuality, which is the true stamp of the cane type. That the cane type tolerates uniformity only so far as it supports culture. To have roads that are maintained, to have a lockstep in the political area, in the economic area, okay, but culture, it must be absolutely free, and that's something that was, of course, not part of the program of Nazi Germany. That they directed everything towards the rebellion, the resistance against the Able types. And I often think about that story. I think the story of Sophie Scholl is very similar to my father's story. She was a young Nazi, she was of the female Nazi youth, and she heard about Nazis putting people up against a wall and gunning them down. And it was, like my father's experience with the torture, where she said, "This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I believed our people were about." That's not that cancels the spirit, the great spirit of my understanding of the Aryan. And they got her. They chopped her head off, and that's it. She was a young woman. And that to me is a perfect example of something that happens when the dark side of Cain unites and does not let go of the fight and the resistance. That's the problem of it, that it doesn't allow for the that question. If everybody's speaking German, does that mean that Goethe and Schiller are revived? That the wonderful parts of German culture, or does it stay hard? Does it stay with the swastika and the lockstep and the repressing culture? And that's what the demons want. The demons want one or the other. They want the anger to be so intense that it's just like, take them all out. Don't rest until they're all taken out.
And that's the thing is that's kind of the dialectic that we're obviously being, I mean, it feels like we're just basically in a total repeat of the 20th century right now, where it's like, we're in we're in the roaring 20s and all the women are prostitutes, and then in the
Yeah,
30s we have a depression, and then in the 40s
yeah,
we'll go back to war. I mean, it really does feel that way, and it's like,
yeah,
you know, and I say that to people, and like, I'm almost to the point where I'm like, is this all just cyclical, and we've been lied to about all of history? And you know, I don't really believe that, but it also wouldn't surprise me if I were to find it
yeah.
out, because it's like, yeah,
You,
it feels very cyclical in a
yeah.
lot of ways.
You know, according to Steiner, that there is the 100-year rhythm that's quite significant, and also the 33-year rhythm, that those are spiritual realities. But and then on top of that, the elite manipulate that. You know, they know, the elite knows Steiner back and forth, and they use him for nefarious purposes. That was one thing that I heard, you know, confirmed. Um, Becoming familiar in the internet, there was a guy who was a Rosicrucian, actually, and I watched a speech that he gave, and he said, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the Jesuits have taken over Steiner's work, and they use it. They use it like black magic, and that these things are, you know, calculated about how to keep things in lockstep from 100 years ago, and to repeat these things so that human beings can't break out. But you know, despite their efforts, though, I mean, Steiner's prediction was 2012 to 2024, that those years were going to define the rest of the millennium. 100 years before that, he said 1912 to 1924 would define the rest of the century. And it's fascinating to see what happened in those years. You know, the Federal Reserve came, you know, right in the 1912, the beginning. 1924 was the Council on Foreign Relations creation. All the intelligence agencies. I mean, they
I think he just lost service or something. So hopefully he'll be back, because we're just kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of that. All right, let's see. Okay, welcome back. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah, so 100-year rhythms. So 1912 to 1924 would define the rest of the century. Then 2012 to 2024 would define the rest of the millennium. Steiner made that prediction in about 2022 and died in 2025. And interestingly enough, Steiner said the year 2020 was going to be the most intense year for both the awakening, spiritual awakening, but also the spiritual trials. And I think we experienced that. I think we, you know, that the side that the, you know, the dark forces could not prevent was mass spiritual awakening. But what they concentrated on was, you know, the release of the beast. That was the, you know, that Steiner said all the beasts would rise up in those 12 years, and it was incredible. But after that time, what I find is very positive is, after that time, their to me, their efforts feel lame. You know, I was prepared for 2012 by the year 1998. And 1998, interestingly enough, was the year 666 times 3, also very important for, you know, spiritual purposes, numerology and whatnot. And so much happened in the year 1998. You know, it's right in between the Truman Show and the Matrix. It was the first time I saw www advertising websites. And that www, by the way, Wicked Witch of the West, you know, that's the corrupted soul of Western humanity, is called the Wicked Witch of the West. And that Wizard of Oz book is theosophical wisdom, a Rosicrucian wisdom. So, you know, they were deliberately, you know, putting all these things into the world hardcore from 1998. And I was like, wow, what the fuck's going to happen in 2012? And you know, it was very intense. My life was absolutely nose to the grind from 2012 to 2024, and it was unbelievable. The physically, spiritually, what was going on. After now, though, I feel very, very positive. I feel like the spiritual world is raining down gifts, and as bad as the physical stuff is going on, I don't feel like it has that bite that it's had in those 12 years. That I feel it's a lot of lame stuff, that they're really trying to repeat what has happened. They really do want the 30s to happen. They want the Great Depression to happen. They want the wars to come and to solidify the world order. But they seem really pathetic to me compared to how it's been.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wish Pill Eater was around because the stuff that I want to say, really, he's the one to make my arguments in a better way than what I could. Like, I am positive, but it's not for any logical reason. Like, I can't think of a logical reason to be positive. But
Yeah.
but you know, and it's also just getting older too. Like we're all we're all getting older and time's running out, and you're thinking like, am I going to go to heaven or hell, or is there even such a thing? And ultimately, like, if there is no such a thing, then I guess I have nothing to worry about, right? So like, I don't even really care about that one. It's like, well, if there's nothing there, then I don't have much to worry about, right? But I do think about, like, is there a life after this? I truly believe there is something. I don't know what it is, but I do think there's something after this.
Yeah.
And I think what we do here does matter. But aside from that, I just kind of generally look out, and I do kind of agree. Like, I think that things are ultimately kind of like falling apart for this kind of like thing, but also at the same time, like, I do see this kind of, it's kind of weird. Like, I think people are smarter than ever in a sense, but also there's like this like disconnectedness that's coming through the technology that is like, it's very insidious because like it's just hard to know. Like, it's good that we're not subsistence farming for like, anymore. That's good. But at the same time, it's like the exploitation that happened, because like, I'm very new to this whole like anti-capitalism thing. And I still believe in like anarcho-capitalist or, Adam Smith ideas in a general sense. Like, of course I do want these things, but at the same time, like, I'm in close proximity to Silicon Valley, and I see the way that these guys are kind of orchestrating everything, and like how they kind of commodify young women and young men into this kind of like meat grinder of consciousness, and even their bodies. Like, I follow a lot of these young women who are like, oh, I was in college and I got a degree, now I'm a sex worker who gets paid by rich Jews to like beat them up at night. And like, I and again, like, that's a profession that's always been around and stuff, but again, it's like on a level that is hard to kind of really understand. And it makes me just very sad because like you've had a wife, right? Yeah, I don't know if you have any kids or not, but it's like, you do have a kid, right? So yeah, so it's like, I truly believe that like being in a relationship and having kids, like, that's kind of what we're meant to do here on earth, because it kind of completes a circuit for us, if that makes sense. Like I was not a whole person as a single guy, right? And I failed multiple relationships, and I still continue to fail. But you get what I'm saying, is like it draws a part out of you that even if I get divorced tomorrow and I never touch a woman again, like, I've gained a certain level of wisdom through my relationship and this kind of stuff, right? So that is just not accessible to these people. And like, I look at these people who are out here, and obviously there's a lot of married people who never mature and never grow up, and I think that's part of what's going on. But you're kind of just dealing with a population of kind of broken, incomplete people that have not really become an adult. I mean, I'm in my later 30s. I'm like, I just feel like I'm kind of becoming an adult. But I look at some of these people who are in this arrested development, up to their 80s, and like they've never become a person that's complete. And no wonder we can't really get anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, materially or spiritually, I guess you'd say.
That's another thing that per Steiner, his recommendation was, don't focus on the masses, on the general. That will always be the abyss that you're looking at, this dragging weight of humanity. That look at the people that are in your small community. That there are a group of souls that incarnated around the same time as you, or maybe they're older mentors. They're the children in your lives. It's your community, and that's the group that you belong with. And to judge consciousness, failures, trajectory of life by that group. but that there's only misery to see what's happening with the masses. That's the that's the experience of the apocalypse. That it's the massive numbers of people are doomed. It's only that the numbers are small.
So it's kind of a return to like a tribal confederacy is kind of like
Yeah.
our best hope, essentially, of like just different tribes, and hopefully we come together and we exchange, women and men and resources and things of that sort, and hopefully out of that grow some sort of larger confederacy or something. And I'm part Native American too, although
Oh wow.
you would never know looking at me probably, but my point is that I like to throw that out there because people are like, "Oh, you're white." And I'm like, "Oh, my dad lived on a reservation, so
Oh wow.
I guess it's enough to say." But if you looked at me and you look at my family, like they'd be like, "You're not Native American." But my point is that I kind of fell in love with the mythology of like early America, that it was like whitey mixing with the natives, and a lot of Asia is kind of like that too. And I kind of still have this like romantic view of things, and I still think it is real. But also it's something that even if it's not real, it's still like kind of the way that things should always be. I mean, my argument about Europe is really that like from Charlemagne forward, Europe didn't really exist in a form that I would be proud of in a lot of ways, because it destroyed tribalism, right? Like what are white people if we're not different tribes that kind of unite and then go back home and do what we do and unite when we have to and then go back home. Like I feel like that's the European model, and that's been lost for a long time now, obviously, and that's kind of why things are so out of whack for Europeans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I should be going soon. It's
no, I have to go soon too. I have a meeting, I think in 30 minutes, so I should go get ready for that. But I want to get into more. If you don't mind, I'll just ask you a couple things, just because you are an expert in Rosicrucianism. Like I have a whole conspiracy theory that I'm working on, and I just call it conspiracy theory because like I know there's something there, but like I'll give you an example. Like are you familiar with like Kurt Cobain or William Burroughs or these kind of people?
Yeah.
Like I truly believe that there's like a Rosicrucian bent to a lot of them, and like some of that comes from like Courtney Love's dad, who kind of said some things like, "Oh, Kurt Cobain was like a bohemian king, and we kind of all knew that, and he was a part of the Grateful Dead," and like I've kind of looked pretty closely at it, and it's like this is kind of like Rosicrucian talk or something, and I think it also connects to like Scientology and stuff like this as well, and Satanism to some degree. So like, and obviously Freemasonry. So I was just kind of curious, like, what's your opinion on like that level of like, do you think that all like, is there a such thing as a good Mason or a good Rosicrucian or a good Scientologist, or is it all just kind of like it because it's in service of black magic, you can't
what
trust
I've
any of
heard
them?
is that at the lower levels of Freemasonry that it's quite benign. Like I mentioned, my father joined when I was 18. As soon as I started getting into Steiner, I couldn't believe it. I always telling him this is nuts. But and he talked about it and just said it's really benign. It's like it's ridiculous what they talk about. That was his experience at the lower levels. But according to Steiner and after Steiner died, I can only go by little rumors that I've heard here or there. But according to Steiner, that they during the French Revolution, that they literally encountered the spirit of Ahriman, and Ahriman showed them the future and showed them what was going to happen to Whitey. Here's what's going to happen to you Cane people if you do not embrace power. That there it really will be no form that you will have for the future. Or you can help me with my incarnation, and I will allow you to survive and your forms to continue. And you can do a portion of good out of that. But this is going to be dedicated to my incarnation. And that they said yes. So
yeah. Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. So when did this occur, you think? 1400s?
No, 1789. That was the beginning of the French Revolution, was when Ahriman presented
Okay.
himself to the. So
So
according to,
would you say that that's like, because like I think Satan or Lucifer, or would that be like a, or would that be more like a antichrist? How
so
would you describe it?
yeah, so according to Steiner, the earlier tempter was Lucifer. Lucifer is the devil of the Bible. He's a snake in the Garden of Eden, and he is the one who is that he's basically the evil that associates with egotism, sex, you know, uh, atavistic, out of body experiences. You know, anything that draws the person away from the earth and makes them superior to their fellow man. That you know, pushes people down for the sake of their own egotistical power. You know, the Pharaoh and all of that. That's a good bit of Lucifer. Hercules. Hercules rescuing Prometheus. Prometheus, according to Steiner and others, was Lucifer. So, you know, and Hercules has an association with Lucifer, and Hercules is like
Yeah,
pure.
it's really
Yeah,
funny you say that, because like I'm on this total kick right now that like Greek mythology is kind of like actually what the Jews based a lot of their stuff on, and it
yeah,
probably came from somewhere else before that. But
yeah,
like if you really look at it, like the city of Tyre had ties to
yeah,
Hercules as well. And this is
yeah,
stuff that I've just kind of discovered recently, and like I'm sure that
yeah,
there's been other people who wrote about it, but I've never read any occult books or anything like that really. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just kind of like looking at mainstream history and trying to like deduce like what is mainstream history telling you about the occult, and what is the occult telling you about mainstream history. That's kind of
yeah,
my theory, I guess you
yeah,
say.
yeah. So so Lucifer was the primary challenge. Then after the 1400s, the power began to shift. And according to Steiner, it was the mid 1800s that Ahriman first made his appearance. Steiner said that, you know, when Goethe wrote his Faust play, that he said you can see Ahriman and Lucifer about to split in the character of Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles is the devil form who is basically half Lucifer and half Ahriman. And Steiner said if you look at Goethe's play, that Goethe did not have the consciousness yet because Ahriman was not manifest on the world yet. But it was after the French Revolution that the Masonic stream, which had previously been in danger of worshiping Lucifer, now took on the Ahrimanic role. So Ahriman is Lord of the Flies. He's Beelzebub. He's the insect master or the machine master. So he's the one who has an incredibly developed intellect, incredibly developed willpower, but no heart. So the skull and bones symbol is the symbol of Ahriman. It's basically the Claddagh ring, the Irish Claddagh ring, minus the heart. So totally different devil.
Oh, interesting. And where do you think this Jews go? Because my theory is like if we're to believe history, right?
Yeah,
I think Christianity and Islam believes this too. Judaism obviously believes this, but like I'm skeptical. Like I think our modern version of, if we're to believe history, I think what we now know as Judaism is a reconstructionist
yeah,
thing. That's my personal belief. So like we
yeah,
don't really know what Judaism was, just like
yeah,
we don't really know what Christianity was before it was codified, right? Like we don't really know what it was in like, you know, the first century, you know, whatever. But
yeah.
um
So my feeling is that the Jewish nature, which includes Catholics, Jesuits, and probably Rosicrucians, because but that they are the mind of Ahriman, and the Masons, you know, including like, you know, the Hitler stream and things like that. Those are the bones. Those are the hands. The force, the
okay.
willpower, the military.
So would you say it's like because I just wrote this article and my friend, I think my Muslim friend might be watching, and he kind of explained Behemoth versus Leviathan. Do you think that's a similar
Yes.
thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know specifically what direction the Rosicrucians went in, but I suspect that maintaining an order, you know, like the AMORC, you know, that was founded, you know, like a regular fraternity, and that's not what Rosicrucianism is supposed to be. It's supposed to be based on direct spiritual perception and a connection to the person.
So
Christian.
almost like a monk. It's almost like a warrior monk type thing, more than like a fraternity or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that
But
makes
but
sense to me.
but
Yeah.
given the way like the yeah, like I said, Jesuits, Catholicism, hardcore Catholicism, Judeo-Christianity, and I would say the corrupted form of Rosicrucianism is all the same. It's all the mind part
Right, because
of it.
like I have a theory that like Protestantism is essentially Rosicrucianism that's been bastardized into basically a crypto Judaism, I would say. But see, the thing is like the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox think that they're immune to this, or at least they present that they're immune to this, and I think they've been totally become like a really dark version. Like I'm sure you're familiar with Dugan and stuff like that. I see like Dugan is like it's essentially like a dark, I don't know, Freemasonic version of Christianity or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
so do you think that that's accurate? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, because I know you got to go soon, but essentially, because like I think Scientology is essentially Rosicrucianism for the 21st century, for the 20th and 21st century. And when I say that, like, I've been reluctant to say this, but I'll say some of this now just because, I don't think there's really much use in like not saying it. But like, for instance, like I think Scientologists are literally running a portion of Trump's government and a portion of the military psychological operations of it. That's my personal belief. Obviously,
Yeah.
I can't prove that, but like I truly
I
believe that that's the case.
Yeah. I mean the links of the those they're all together like that. I have not heard that, but I believe that would be that's
Yeah,
I would,
but a lot of the people I'm referring to probably wouldn't call themselves Scientologists. They don't think of themselves that way. If anything, what I'm saying is that Scientology is just a system, just like Masonry or Rosicrucianism.
Yeah.
It's a system that can be kind of infinitely remixed. And this is ultimately my problem with Judaism or whatever you want to call it, with like the Zohar and the Kabbalah and even the Bible. Like, the problem is not that it's not true. The problem is that it is true in a sense, whether historically or spiritually or whatever. But the average person, because they lack spiritual connection, it plays out more like a script that they're reading that they're not conscious of. If that makes any sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I thoroughly agree. Yeah.
And so my point is that obviously, if you're dealing with a bunch of unconscious trance-like people, and then how to like direct them in their trance, and they may have like a touch of connection here and there, but ultimately, I was writing this article with the I use AI a lot to like test like how could I fit these ideas together, because I'm pretty sure I know what I'm on about, but like I don't know how to really do the overlays right. But like I was making this argument that like a lot of people have become like a golem or a homunculus or these things that are kind of like cyborgs or robots that are biological, right? And I know there's people who wrote about this, but I'm just looking at it from like a practical, pragmatic, like non woo-woo kind of way. Like I think you can make a really strong argument that like, people have been kind of programmed, especially by technology and these things, and the English language and these like kind of like concepts of like good and bad and self-interest or an individualism and all these ideas that are not themselves evil, but an unconscious mind kind of manifesting things almost like evocation or something like that. Without, it's kind of like I think a lot of evocation is done by unconscious people, right? Like I think people kind of manifest things without knowledge of what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly how Steiner described it. And he called the method of the black magic the suggestion. And making people suggestible has been an intense project that was carried out in America, especially in the late 1800s. Compulsory education, the two-party American system, and the capitalistic industrialization, the academic world. they did it too. That they went through a complete overhaul about accreditation, calling people doctors. Doctors come from the Rosicrucians. The doctors were the one who gave the Rosicrucians gave us the word doctor. Freemasons gave us the word master, as in master's degree. The idea of degrees comes from both those traditions too, and so those were worked into this this effort to create an egregore of American consciousness, which was meant to be dull and suggestible.
Right. Well, and that's what I lament so much is like I see what's happening with these. I only have like most of my family's uneducated, right? But I have like a couple people who have educations in my family, and they're not stupid people. They're extremely smart. They know basically, in a sense, what we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they'll justify it and say, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like, and that's a white people thing. But then I look at Silicon Valley and I see these Indians and Chinese, and I truly don't hate any of these people, but I kind of lament it because like they've become these initiates, and they're just trying to be a white person who's gone down the same path, right? But the thing is, like, white people are not in control. I mean, maybe that's a good question for you. Do you think that white people are in control of Freemasonry or any of this ultimately, or is this like an Anglo Judaic conspiracy to like feed on people, or is it just vampirism, or how would you describe it? I guess.
So I would say that white people, as the Kane stream, are the muscle, they're the bones, they're the willpower of it, and that the Jews are the mind part of it. But are they in control? No, it's that they're in the service of Ahriman. That there's no.
So it's kind of like an antichrist, essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, basically, you
yeah.
can make an argument. It's like, and so
Yeah.
would you put it like this, like because I do think that there's this kind of, this is what I really want to write about, and I don't know how to. And
Mhm.
again, I know you got to go, so if you got to go, just let me know. But
Okay,
this
sure,
is kind of the crux of everything I'm trying to get at, right? Like
yeah.
the argument I'm trying to make is like, look, white replacement is, and this is what my last article was about with like Odysseus, right?
Mhm.
Odysseus is this guy who's basically like the tool of Leviathan, and he's like trying to get rid of Behemoth to become a Titan himself. Or I didn't put all that in there because it's a little bit too much to like argue, but
Mhm.
you know, like look at Greek mythology. You have like Cronus that comes out and castrates Sky Daddy, and Sky Daddy goes away, and now Saturn or Kronos thinks that he's the ruler, and then Prometheus comes down and gives technology to people, but it's kind of like a Trojan horse of technology. Like, I'm going to teach you how to do everything, and it's going to serve you. And I feel like that's Ahriman in a sense, where it's like, I'm going to give you all this stuff that's going to help you, but ultimately you're building this thing for him or for it or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And my point in saying all that is that a lot of people think it's the Jews ruling over us, and all this. I see the Jews as basically a slave of a different kind to this
Yeah.
Ahriman, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that there is this white replacement. So they're trying to bring in the Indians and the Chinese. And again, I don't have hatred
Mhm.
towards them, but there is something unique about Whitey. But the uniqueness is being kind of like, for lack of a better term, bred out of us
Mhm.
slowly but surely. And I don't think it's really purely genetics. Like I'm not this like you know eugenicist genetics person, and in fact, like I said, like I think that like personally my bent is I think that whites and Asians of all kinds should really mix and create a new race of people as a
Mhm.
sidestep to all this. That's my personal answer to it, because
Mhm.
I think that's happened before. If you look at Central Europe, the steppes, I mean, I think
Mhm.
Eurasianism's been around. I think that's kind of what Dugin's trying to get ahead of, and they're trying to create this kind of like false Eurasianism, in my opinion. But
Hmm.
um and I think that this Ariman or whatever is trying to keep everybody a liberal individualist in order to just basically keep people kind of desperate for resources. So they'll just kind of become more and more like cyborgs. But my point is, like, do you think that they could replace Whitey with these other people, or is this more of like a negotiation tactic to say, like, well, if you guys don't want the job, we'll just get somebody else to do it?
I personally think, especially now that that their hope is that they will create the conditions that the human beings will decide for themselves to replace themselves or die off in war or capitulate. That there's that point in the Bible where humanity cries up to the gods, to God himself, and says, what are we to do? We're absolutely powerless against the face of the might of the devil, the two-horned beast. And God says, do you think that, like that things actually work this way? That, that this is, the devil doesn't have 100% of the control. And there will be a time when the will faints away, where he lifts the hand to bind, and he will not have the will to do it. This is a very limited time that he has. And I believe that's the case now. I think it's absolutely their intention to destroy Europe. It's been, they've been concentrating on destroying Europe for the longest time, for destroying the Cane stream. And I believe that power has fallen off the shelf after 2024. That I think that the worst possible thing that could happen is that people wake up to the fact, but then do the negative thing of basically going to war, of basically fighting for the resources.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, and I think what you're saying is like ultimately, you have the heart, and you have the brain, or you have like the arms and the head, right, of this thing, and it feels like Ahriman is basically trying to like set it up so it's like a spiritual evolution that they're trying to create out of this, saying like, well, if you guys want to work with me, you need to evolve and kill off 99%. And I don't know if you ever heard of Jason Giorgiani. He basically makes this argument. He's a Luciferian, but if you haven't looked into him, you should definitely look into him, because he's a pretty interesting person. I'm not promoting him in a positive way per se, but I think you can learn a lot from him. But what I'm saying is that this theory that they're trying to drive progress or evolution of humans either towards destruction or whatever, because and my friend who's a Muslim, hopefully is watching, this goes with the technology thing, right? Like is technology for humans, or is technology for something else?
That's
Right.
Ahriman himself is technology. That's one of the big themes in the Wizard of Oz is the confrontation with technology as a prophetic theosophical. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Steiner comes from the theosophical tradition until he broke off to form his own society. But Madame Blavatsky was one of the early occultists who tried to bring out the positive aspects of occultism, secret societies, into the public so that humanity could be enlightened, to bring the wisdom to enlightenment, to bring the wisdom of enlightenment to humanity for humanity's positive advancement. That was her mission.
That's kind of like creating a bunch of chaotic good people that kind of
Exactly.
I very strongly felt like, I'm not a theosophical person. I'm skeptical of it, but I do see the wisdom in that, and I think that's kind of Protestantism as well. Like I think Protestantism was this force that kind of created this kind of like chaotic good in the world, but the chaotic good obviously is chaotic, so it can turn bad really easily, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And it did. I mean, very, very clear. Madame Blavatsky died in 1891, and very fast, very quickly after that, it just all went to hell for sure. But nonetheless, Frank L. Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, was a theosophist, and it is, it's a lockstep diagram of prophecy for the United States based on theosophical wisdom. So the head, heart, and hands is there. The Tin Man needs the heart, Lion needs the willpower, and the Scarecrow needs the mind, and head, heart, and hands. And the Wicked Witch of the West, the soul of the West, defeated by the water. The water is the symbolism of the etheric world, which is, that the Vril society that that stood behind the Nazi occultism. That is the same energy, the Atlantean life force energy that's represented by the water that Dorothy throws on the witch to dissolve her. And the main struggle there is against the technology. And and with technology is also the flying monkeys. And I believe the flying monkeys, those are the beings that are behind the presence, the consciousness behind computer technology, the AI stuff and whatnot, that they're at the conscious level of monkeys, but they have the wings to represent that they're spiritual creatures. they're not embodied.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and also, you know, I've heard this contradicted recently, and apparently there's a video out there, but I've heard that J.R. Tolkien also said the ring symbolizes technology. Take that as you will. That's what I always grew up hearing.
That makes a lot of sense to me, honestly, because you know, me and my friend have this thing that we've created that you know, I mean, he's written a whole book on it. I'll send it to you later. You know, I wanted to invite him on, but I'm just so distracted, like I can't handle much right now because I have a lot going on too. But I eventually want you to speak to him because he's written a whole book about, you know, Pauline theology and how it was weaponized by occultism. And because like I'm a big fan of Paul, but also like I understand his perspective, because it's like Paul is very dangerous. Like Paul is a very dangerous writer if you really understand what he's saying, which I don't even fully understand it, but it's like this, like, you know, it's like these, I mean, I think it's the seeds of like the ultimate union with the spiritual realm, or it's also the ultimate way to like subvert everyone and just like drive everyone off a cliff. Like I think you could do either one with it if you really understand what's at. And I think Taoism is the same way. Like I'm a big Tao Te Ching guy. I think you know, if you read that and you see like it sounds like a bunch of nonsense in a sense, but you really look at it, it's like it's very, you know, if you want to make everything happen, just don't do anything. It sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of like this, you know, kind of like alchemy or something. I don't know, but he, you know, he has this thing about technology, and I think technology, like it's kind of like, it's like if life is a game and you're just trying to cheat by using all this technology, well, the technology kind of owns you in a sense, right? Because now how you're playing the game has become who you are.
Yeah.
And that's something that's so hard to explain to the average person, right? Like they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I have all this money, I have all this, and I have all that. But it's like, and they're like, and a lot of people just don't believe in an afterlife or whatever. But it's like, I'm sure you can see when you look at a lot of people, like that spiritual damage accumulates and it makes them, organic portal for Ahriman almost, or something, you know, like if I had to put it simply, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I appreciate your time, and I'll let you go. I have to go do something as well, but we'll do this again soon, and probably have a private conversation. I just wanted to like fill it out on here because I haven't done this for a while, and I paid for this service by accident because I had it on auto pay, and so like I'm like I might as well use this shit now. So I really appreciate you coming by, and I'll look forward to more of your work and talking more in the future. So I appreciate you.
Me too. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for setting it up.
Me too. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
You too. Bye.